Welcome to the itdvds.com YouTube channel. This is just a sample of the training available at itdvds.com. If you would like to see complete training, please go to itdvds.com. Now let's begin the sample. Now we're at the Setup Type section, and we're going to configure our partitions for our ESX server. Now this is different than it was with ESX 3.5. We have two options here. We got a standard option. This is going to set up ESX on a single hard drive or LUN, and it's actually going to be the first disk, and it's going to create a VMDK for the service console. So we'll get into that in a little bit when we go through the advanced setup, but know that this is different. Before, it would create our physical partitions, and we still have a few physical partitions, but our service console was also on a physical partition, and then it would create everything else, all the disk space that was left, and make a data store out of it. So let's take a look at advanced setup to go in a little bit more detail about what is actually happening with our ESX4 partitions. And if we'd like, we can configure bootloader automatically. I'm just going to leave this checked and click Next. So here's where we're going to select the storage device that we want to put our ESX server on. So I'm going to select the first disk. 34.73 gigs available. You can see I've got another disk in here that's 140 gigs. If I wanted to install ESX on that one, I would just select it here. But I'll select the first one, click Next, and it lets you know that there's going to be some data loss. Before you install ESX, all the data will be erased. So go ahead and click OK. Here's where we can create a new data store for our service console. And if we leave this checked, it's going to put it on the same physical disk as we selected in the previous screen, so as our ESX server. If I uncheck it, you can see we can select a different disk for our service console. Now when we do this, certain partitions that are our physical partitions are still going to be on the drive we selected in the previous screen. And that's our /boot partition and our /VM core partition. And we're going to take a look at that in a little bit more detail in another movie because it's kind of hard to visualize just talking about it. But I'm going to create the data store on the same device. Now if we had an existing data store available, we'd be able to select this option here. And ESX4 can't see VMFS2 data stores. You can only see VMFS3. And VMFS is the file system type for our data stores. And down here we can give our new data store a name that it's going to create. I'm going to call it ESX02-local01. And it's just a naming convention I like to use. You can use whatever you'd like. I'll go ahead and click Next. And here's where we can configure our partitions that are actually on the VMDK that's going to be created for our service console. Remember, a VMDK is a virtual disk. So you can see our swap partition is going to be on the VMDK. Our /var/log partition is also going to be on the VMDK. And the root partition, just the slash, is going to be on our VMDK also. And here are the recommended sizes. 600 megabytes, and VMware actually recommends that you keep this just like it is. Same with the log partition. They recommend that they keep it like it is. You can make it a little bit bigger. It's really not going to hurt anything. If you're doing some kind of archiving on this partition, then you'd probably want to make it bigger, say 5 gigs. To do that, we just highlight it, click Edit, and I'm just going to use the up arrow. Notice gigabytes is selected. And go over here and I'll just type in 5 gigs. Click OK. And remember, this is all going to go in that VMDK that's on the first data store it's going to create. And you can see the total service console size. So this is going to be the total size of the VMDK. And for my root partition here, 5 gigs, I actually like to make this a little bit bigger as well. I'm going to go ahead and make it 10 gigs in size. So the last thing we want to do is run out of room. But VMware actually does an excellent job of protecting itself from any space issues causing problems with your ESX server. because what we don't see here is there's that /boot and /vmk core partition, and those are all protected from running out of space. Now there are a number of partitions we can also create to help protect against running out of disk space. We could create a /usr partition, a /home partition for our users, /tmp partition for temporary files. These are all just to protect yourself against running out of disk space. They're not necessary, and most likely you won't necessarily need them unless you're going to be installing other programs on this ESX server. Our users are going to be actually logging into the service console and adding files to the ESX server. That's when you'd want to add those partitions, but again, they're not necessary. So I'm going to go ahead and leave these partitions and click Next. Now I'm going to select the time zone. I'll go ahead and click Advanced. I'll go ahead and scroll down. And time zone I'm in is America Phoenix. I'll go ahead and select it. Click OK. And click Next. Now we're going to want to make sure our date and time is set correctly. We'll configure it here if it's not. Click Next. Now we're going to want to type in the password for our root account. And we can also add additional accounts down here if we'd like. Click Add. These would be for additional users. We can also do this later through the virtual infrastructure client or the vSphere client. So I'm just going to click Cancel and do it later. Click Next. And we get a nice summary here of our installation. We'll want to review it, make sure everything's correct. And here you can see our boot partition, and this is going to be a physical partition, is 1.1 gigs. And if I scroll down, we can see the other partitions. And here's our VMK core partition. You can see that's 110 megabytes. Again, that's for core dumps, usually for troubleshooting and support purposes. And we'll want to just make sure everything's configured correctly and click Next. And it's going to go ahead and go through the installation. Depending on your hardware and whether you're doing this over the network or a physical DVD, it can take anywhere from about 25 minutes to 10 minutes. So it's not too bad. And the installation's complete. I'll go ahead and click Next. And finish. And I'll want to go ahead and eject the DVD if it doesn't do it automatically.